To what extent do you feel Jane Austen is trying to persuade you to think about the role of women in Victorian society?
I think to a great extent, Jane Austen is trying to show that women in Victorian society had like the um, control over things that were going in their lives, um, and like that each specific type of woman, whether it was a mother or like a daughter, like they both had like a role. Like the mother's role was to make sure that they they send their child off to marry someone, or the daughter off to marry someone so that they could have a place to live. And then I feel like the daughter's role was to basically do as she sees fit, and in the sense that to to make sure that she has a place to live, and um also like to basically like kind of do what you want, but like to make sure you're like happy. And a good example of that would be Elizabeth denying Mr. Collins, and it shows how Elizabeth was a female and she had the power to refuse his offer of marriage, and then her friend Charlotte Lucas, she later on accepted his proposal of marriage, so that kind of shows that two different or that the women were able to either say yes or no, and that was a dramatic like event in their life that changes their life obviously. And then another example would be um, Lydia doing what she wants, to which would be getting with Mr. Wickham, and that practically almost ruined their family's reputation. But and yeah, that basically shows how women were basically had like a job of doing what they pleased, and to make sure like they yeah, basically doing what they want. Next question.
How do Elizabeth's faults enhance the book?
Um, Elizabeth's faults enhance the book because, well, Elizabeth's faults would be her her being prideful, her prejudice, and being naive, and her having pride shows that, well, first of all of them together creates more drama, and it allows Jane Austen to extend the novel, and it should her like her pride to be able to like to deny Mr. Darcy's first proposal of marriage, that extends the book, and it shows that like because it was obvious that marrying Mr. Darcy would be better for be, be better for her. Even Mr. Collins would be better for her, because once Mr. Bennet dies, then she has to leave the house. So just marrying is better for her, but like she's too prideful because and prejudiced because she thought of Mr. Collins as a dimwit, and she didn't really want to associate with him. That didn't really give him a chance. And same with Mr. Darcy. I mean, she had reasons to dislike him at first, but I feel that Mr. Darcy had like a higher position, so it was definitely better for her to marry him. And then being naive would be like with Mr. Wickham, how she believed Mr. Wickham at first, and basically like judged and had a prejudice toward Mr. Darcy, which obviously affected the novel, and and also how like it kind of bothered me the fact that she was able to change her mind so quickly after hearing one person's view, and then the other, like she didn't. I didn't feel like she didn't give enough time to like think about it, and that that extends and like gives more drama, because you kind of at first you kind of don't know who to believe, but then obviously you go along with Elizabeth because she's the main character, and it's obvious that Mr. Darcy is not actually the bad guy that Mr. Wickham like told us. In the next question.
Do you think that Austen believed that love should be an essential component of any marriage? How do you know?
I do believe Jane Austen tries to show that love is essential because in the beginning of the novel, Elizabeth and Charlotte Lucas have a conversation at the ball on and how marriage should be, and Elizabeth's view was you should take time to know the person and like get to know them and actually have feelings for them before you just like jump into marriage. And Charlotte's view was that you should before you know them, so that you don't know any of their faults, you should just marry them, and then it'd be better because then there's no like once you marry, like you don't really like once you once you're together, then you don't really like you. It wasn't really a thing to like leave the husband. Um, so it's more like it's kind of like you're trapped, but you're not. You know. So so that was like her idea, and she was trying to show that Elizabeth um definitely believes that you should love the person first because she she doesn't love. It's obvious that she doesn't love Mr. Collins, so she denies his proposal. Then she denies Mr. Darcy's first proposal, but then she acquires feelings for him, which then she definitely starts to believe and actually love Mr. Darcy, and she even tells her father, Mr. Bennet, how much she loves him, and that's definitely essential to marriage.
Are men and women treated equally by Austen in this novel? Explain.
Men and women are definitely not treated equally in the novel. I feel like men have more of a high position, and like women are like lower, and I mean women do have like a big impact on what happens, but I think the men still like overall still has like a high position because like Mr. Darcy was able to save the Bennett's family reputation by paying off Mr. Wickham, and I feel like a lady definitely wouldn't do that, and besides the lady didn't really have like wealth besides like Lady Catherine de Bourgh, but like it was more there was more males that had high power, and it was like they were able to acquire land and like to acquire things through like wills because such like the the Bennet's the Bennett sisters they had to leave the house because they couldn't acquire that after Mr. Bennet died, and Mr. Collins can, so that shows that men have like a higher position than women do.